Okay, thank you for joining us, everyone. Welcome to the Council of Graduate Schools webinar, Using Technology to Gain Insight into Your Graduate Students and Programs, Leaders Share Best Practices. And this webinar is sponsored by Cayuse. Next slide. So just a few webinar logistics before we get started today. We do encourage you to please submit audience questions at any time through the Q&A feature in your Zoom toolbar. The recording as well as the presentation slides will be emailed to registrants as well as posted to the CGS website after the live event. So this event is being recorded and will be made available afterwards. The chat is available to all attendees, and conversation in the chat among attendees is encouraged. Next slide. And now I'd like to turn the presentation over to my colleague, Julia Kent, Vice President of Best Practices and Strategic Initiatives of the Council of Graduate Schools. Julia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matt. And I'd like to begin by just saying good afternoon to our members in the on the East Coast, and good morning to our Mountain and Pacific time zone members. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's CGS webinar, Using Technology to Gain Insight into Your Graduate Students and Programs, Leaders Share Best Practices. And I'm pleased to kick off today's presentation because I know that supporting the progress and success of graduate students is a top priority for everyone participating today. We're looking forward at CGS to learning about how 2 of our CGS member universities are using technology to support their students and how they envision future solutions for further supporting their efforts. Before we get started, I also want to take a moment to thank Cayuse for their programmatic and financial support for this webinar, and also for being the newest member of the CGS Sustaining Membership Network, which allows companies to demonstrate their commitment to advancing graduate education and also to share their expertise with CGS members. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Jason Porter, who will serve as our facilitator today. Jason is Senior Vice President of Global Programs at Cayuse. And since 2017, Jason and his team have helped over 300 global research programs evaluate their current systems to support a broad spectrum of research activities. In his current role, Jason is focused on developing new solutions to support graduate schools and libraries and their programs and research activities. Prior to joining Cayuse, Jason spent over 10 years working in the healthcare technology and cybersecurity fields. And so at this time, I'd like to pass things over to you, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Good day to everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. We're thrilled to have this chance to share some insights from some of our key customers who have embraced technology to support their graduate programs. So our plan for the next 40 minutes or so is to spend just a few minutes providing an overview of the Cayuse systems. Many of you on the call may not be as familiar with Cayuse as some of our core research customers. And so we'd like to just take a moment to make sure we level set on that. And then we're going to spend most of the time today in discussion with Illinois State University and the University of Northern Colorado. And they're really going to help us kind of think about what was going on in their organization that led them to the point where they decided an investment in technology was needed to support the further growth and success of their graduate programs. And we'll have plenty of time for questions and dialogue. We all say this when we go into these presentations. We do really want this to be an interactive discussion. You're not going to get 32 PowerPoint slides over the next hour. We're going to have plenty of breathing room to answer questions and to have discussion. But before we do that, if we could go to the next slide, I would first love for our 2 esteemed colleagues to introduce themselves. I'll start out with Noelle Selko, PhD with the Illinois State Graduate School. Noelle, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your program?
Sure. I'm Noelle Selko. I am the Director of Graduate Studies at Illinois State University. We are the oldest public university in the state of Illinois, founded in 1857. We have about 2,700 graduate students and over 130 graduate programs encompassing doctoral, master's, and certificate programs.
Thank you, Noelle. Great to have you here today. Thanks for joining us. And next, I'd love to have Jerry Ann Lyons, PhD with University of Northern Colorado. Jerry, could you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your program?
Sure. I'm Jerry Ann Lyons. I am the Associate Vice President for Research and Dean of the Graduate School at the University of Northern Colorado. We too have about 130 graduate programs and about 2,000 graduate students. Maybe a little fewer at this point. And we too were founded around 1850 as a teachers college, and over time have grown in a number of areas. We offer PhD and professional doctorates in a variety of fields, as well as master's programs, teacher licensure and endorsement programs, as well as certificate programs.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerry Ann. It's a pleasure to have you here as well today. We appreciate your time, both of you. So before we dive into the discussion, I would just like to take a couple minutes to talk further about the Cayuse organization and what we're here to accomplish. So as a business, we are focused on delivering meaningful technology solutions that support the broad life cycle of research. So today we're going to be talking about one particular solution, but our mission really is to support the research organizations around the globe to provide better solutions to advance scientific discovery, that benefits our society. Our organization was founded by a researcher. We take our support of, again, the kind of broad research life cycle, the students and faculty members involved in research very seriously, and we're thrilled to provide solutions now to nearly 600 institutions around the globe. Next slide, please. So in order to provide that support, we have a broad base of software solutions that really span the entire life cycle of research. Today, we're going to be talking about the solution circled there in orange, which is our Graduate Education Manager software tool. This is a solution that we are really excited about because it gives us an opportunity to provide support to many of those early stage researchers who are involved in research in their graduate programs. But the tool is designed to really support any graduate student on their journey through the process. And we decided that this was an important area to focus because we knew there were a number of challenges being faced by by graduate schools. If we could go to the next slide. And what we found in discussions with a number of graduate programs around the globe, including a focus group we did with CGS back in the fall, there are several key issues that are facing graduate programs today. The first, of course, is that we provide our students the opportunity to have a very customized experience in many of our graduate programs, and this kind of unique path that every student gets an opportunity to take makes it really difficult to understand and track where the students are at in their individual progress. We heard loud and clear that that's an issue institutions face. Next, what we heard from institutions is that the programs you're running are decentralized. You've got your graduate programs out in the different colleges and universities that are being executed, and then you have this centralized administrative group trying to understand what's happening across all of those disparate departments. And that makes it difficult to really have an eye on what is happening at the student and faculty level in your graduate studies programs. So we heard that also was a big challenge faced by institutions. And then finally, through the research that's been done even by CGS around mental health and the effects of graduate program organization on students, we know that having this complex environment that's decentralized makes it difficult for students to understand where they're going, what their expectations are, and where they currently sit in their progression towards degree completion. And we know that if students are, start to feel frustrated, they start to disengage a bit from their program, it can lead to dropout and dissatisfaction. And that's an area we want to impact for our customers and help improve. So those are the challenges that we as an organization were looking to address. And we were able to find a solution to those problems through the Graduate Education Manager solution. If we could go to the next slide. So this product that we're going to be talking about today really provides a centralized hub for students, faculty members, as well as the administrative staff to interact with the student's journey through their program of study. And what we're looking to do is kind of unlock all those places where information is currently stored or sometimes, not even stored. And we want to give access to the right people at the right time to have a great understanding of what's happening in these programs. Ultimately, we know if we can do that, we can provide the transparency and the information that both students, faculty, and administrators need to have a more successful journey through their graduate program. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to focus on two institutions that have made the investment in this technology. For everybody's information, kind of where they're at in their journey, both Noelle's organization and Jerry Ann's organization are currently implementing this solution. So we're going to spend our time today really talking about the problems that they were facing in their programs that were the impetus to change, and talk a little bit about why they decided to make these steps and how they got buy-in, because that's a very difficult part, as we know, in a graduate school, is to get buy-in from all the constituents involved in potentially changing process. That's where we're going to focus our discussion and time today. Okay, next slide, please. So to start that off, I'm going to stop talking because we're going to turn it over to the smart people here. And I'd love to have Noelle jump in here and tell us a little bit about what was going on in Illinois State. And I apologize in advance, Noelle. I may jump in and ask you a few questions along the way, but feel free also to use the Q&A feature. If you have questions for Noelle, I can ask those as we go.
Thanks, Jason. So as you hit on in the previous slide, we were facing many of those same challenges. As our university and actually our accrediting agency, the Higher Learning Commission, is starting to want graduate data on retention and progress towards degree, we really did not have a great mechanism to do that. And retention is very different at the graduate level than it is at the undergraduate level. At the undergraduate level, it's usually how many students are graduating in 4 years, 5 years, and 6 years. At the graduate level, they could take at our institution, it's 6 years to finish a master's degree, 8 years to finish a doctoral degree. And if it takes a student a longer time to do that, it may not necessarily be a bad thing. We know that at the graduate level, students have other obligations, they may be working, family, that may cause them to take some time off here and there. Really, for us, we just want to make sure that can they complete that degree within that time frame. But without having a really good mechanism to do that, we were looking for something that could help us track some of that data. We also are not centralized, so we are very decentralized. Our departments do all of our admission processes. They sort of create their own Excel sheets for tracking students. And as I mentioned, a problem we were having is that unless the student is enrolled in a semester, they tend to not be showing up on reports. Well, again, if a student is taking a semester or a year off, we still want to be able to engage with them or have them show up on a report. And that was missing at our university. We also have graduate coordinator turnover. So some programs, it's a 3-year term. Other programs, it's as long as the person wants to be in that role. And when turnover happens, again, are we making sure that students are still staying connected, or again, they're showing up on that list? And then the other thing is we were having some discussions on if a faculty member is on a research committee, should they be receiving some sort of compensation, whether that is a course release, and how many students should be on that research committee. And so again, we really didn't have a good way, centralized way of looking at faculty load and distribution across our university to provide some guidance to our other departments and department chairs on possibly looking at a model that is consistent across the university. And then the last challenge we had is really routing of forms. Prior to COVID, everything was still done by paper. And I would say even during COVID, we really had to switch to a lot of email and using email as signature, but we really didn't have a great workflow product, particularly when we have committee members that are not on campus. So those external committee members at other institutions. If you have a single sign-on, that can be really tricky to have an external member be incorporated into your university without some sort of other login avenue. And so again, we're looking for ways to create a workflow so that we could sort of get away from our paper forms, build some forms electronically that would allow for an easing routing structure. So those were really the three things we were looking for. And when we had demoed the Cayuse product, we felt that it was something we were interested to learn more about because it looked like at the time we would be able to have some of those things addressed that we were having in those challenges. So then why graduate education manager? So again, as we were, and full disclosure, we have Cayuse as a research package on our research side of things. So again, we have been part of Cayuse for a while. And when this graduate education manager came about, again, it was something that sort of piqued our interest. We were really wanting to allow programs to retain their individuality. And that was part of the buy-in for us, is that we had to make sure that every program feels special in the process and can maintain that individuality, because every program's a little bit different. We also know that there are electives. So not every student in the same program is going to be taking the same coursework. They're also not going to be doing some of the same professional development. So we wanted to be able to have that individuality for our students and our programs if we were to go to some sort of centralized system. We also wanted the graduate school to be able to collect data and possibly address concerns sooner. So if we're running a report and we were seeing maybe for some reason there is a longer delay from when a student is proposing a topic versus when they're actually completing the dissertation or their thesis, what might be going on? Are we seeing faculty turnover? Are we not seeing faculty hires coming in to help replace that? Is the comprehensive exam somehow the students are maybe not passing that first time and needing another try? So are we able to sort of intervene a little bit? We also wanted the graduate coordinators to be able to try to address some things themselves and bring some data back at the department level and not always have to rely on a centralized or a higher unit to provide data for them. We wanted to also be able to keep our student files in one place, and we thought, and having a place to timestamp. So again, if we aren't using email, how are we knowing when students are turning things in? Or again, a draft gets turned in and a student isn't receiving feedback in a timely manner. And again, we can be very lenient on kind of what that time frame is. But again, if a student isn't getting feedback and it's been 4 weeks, half of a semester, why are they not receiving that feedback? And we can go back to look to see when materials are being submitted. We also know that faculty get a lot of email. And so having a place where sort of materials could be shared back and forth in one location so that we weren't having to search through email, we thought could be a good solution for some of our faculty, particularly when they're on multiple committees. We also wanted to have communication between students and committee members as well as submitting forms. So again, being able to know what form is submitted, when it's been submitted, what office has received it, making sure that everybody is staying informed on where information is being received and approved. And then the system allows for students to communicate with one another. Again, not necessarily having to go through email, but again, being able to track progress, track conversations that have happened, tasks that may need to be completed, when they need to be completed, all located in one location. And then for us to have something sort of centralized, or again, that's going to roll out to the entire university, we wanted to make sure that it was easy to navigate. there's a lot of systems that many universities use. And so the last thing you want is something that's very cumbersome, or you have to go to multiple locations or different screens, particularly when it is faculty and students that are using the system. We want it to be pretty straightforward, easy to manage, and everything was kind of all in one place. And so again, after having gone through a demo and seeing what the product could provide, we felt that those were, again, made us very interested in the product and wanted us to pursue that. So as far as
can I ask you, can I interrupt, Noel? Just
yes.
quick question for you. So I think, you know, what you're sharing there, a number of institutions can empathize, I'm sure, with the challenges, and there are often solutions that are, you know, available to address these challenges, not just the solution we're talking about today. I'm curious if there was like a real tipping point, like in either the challenges or what was going on in the university, because ultimately to drive change is hard, and, you know, to get people, you're going to go into buy-in, but I'm just curious if there was anything that really kind of said, we've got to do something now.
Yeah, I think for us, kind of the tipping point was a few things. We have a new provost and president. The provost came in first and then the president. So our president is just finishing her first year. Our provost is finishing his second year. Clearly, they came in during a very difficult time during the pandemic, but now they are starting to focus in on forward thinking. And our provost is a former AVP of research and dean of the graduate school. Our president is also very much served in the same role as well. So we have leadership that understands graduate education, and we're, I think, a little shocked, to be quite honest, at the lack of data that we had for graduate education. And this is just one piece of it, but being able to know where our students are in a point of time and helping with that retention piece. We are really focusing as well on student success, I'm sure, as many other universities are too. And again, the graduate space will always be, I wouldn't say secondary, but we're second in as far as the size of our students. We have less graduate students than undergraduate students. So it's natural to have more resources or programming geared towards undergraduate students. However, our graduate students serve a very important piece to our university, particularly when they're graduate assistants or teaching assistants and need resources to be successful in those unique roles. And so again, having leadership that understands that, we needed to have data to also understand how our graduate students were performing and graduate student success. And so we had started moving some platforms. We have what's called the Graduate Student Success Dashboard, which helps us just to sort of quickly, using a logarithm, kind of find where students are. And this is going to supplement that. But again, really allowing graduate only data, because we really aren't having that right now. And so that was really the tipping point, is we did not have data for graduate students. And this was the point in time we needed it. And we actually had people that were listening to us, and we're actually the ones promoting the data needs.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful, thanks.
Yep, and so talking about buy-in at our institution, and again, I'm sure like many others, shared governance is really important, and everyone wants to feel like they have a voice. And we're certainly want to make sure that if we're going to implement something, we want to feel like we have heard concerns and that we're not just telling the university what they're going to do, that really it's coming from the programs and the departments, and they're seeing that this is solving a problem. So we utilize small groups of grad coordinators. We had a few department chairs come in and actually kind of look at a demo for the product. We had Cayuse come in and talk to this group a few times, and we recorded some sessions where we could ask questions. And then prior to even Cayuse coming in, we talked to grad coordinators just to say, this is something that we're looking at. What are some pros? What are some cons? Then what we did is, as I mentioned, we had some demos with grad education manager with those same group of people. We recorded it, we gathered feedback, and everyone kind of seemed on board with that. And I should say that we currently did not have a system in place. So we had nothing. So it's not like we had something that now is being replaced. This is really new for us. So again, it's not something where we have to really shift a lot of focus and training. Everyone's going to kind of be learning this new system at the same time. And then our plan is once we get through implementation, which should be probably about the end of the fall semester, we are going to take 5 to 7 graduate programs and pilot it within our spring semester, just to kind of see how things are working, you know, tease out any bugs, just kind of make sure that our flow is working. And then once that all happens, our goal is that by fall of 2023, we will implement it to the entire university. Every student will be in the system, regardless if they are doing a thesis or a dissertation. We're looking to use this for just some tracking again of that progress towards degree as to what they're doing and the form submission to the graduate school. But then any student doing a project would also be in there as well. So again, we're hoping during that pilot time that again, if something just really isn't working, again, we're hearing from the programs. That's the key thing, is keeping our programs in the loop and involved. And they're actually involved during our implementation period. We have a team that's involved. So again, their voice can be heard during this process.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I thought that your approach on the pilot, did that help kind of with the negotiation of getting people bought into it, that it wasn't going to be a big bang, kind of everybody on at the same time?
Yeah, I do think that that really helped. We had the support again from a small group of our graduate coordinators, but again, from every college was represented, large programs, small programs, doctoral programs, master's level programs. And then I think what helped too is, again, we had support from the provost's office. We had support from my boss as well. And then we were actually able to work with our technology solutions team. So we had our chief technology officer. Basically, we approached the idea to him, and because this is going to be a university-wide solution, they actually covered the cost for us, which was really great. Not anything we were really anticipating, but we felt that due to the cost compared to some other things that we were looking at or knowing, that we felt for the number of students that this would be impacting, because it would be all of our graduate students, that this was really something that we felt was needed. And again, we had the buy-in and support from our coordinators, which then helped us to say, you know, this is something that's really needed. And then we were actually able to take it to a larger university entity on our campus to pitch the idea, and then they actually covered our costs.
I know from working with your team in the research office as well, that your IT organization is always running at max capacity, like most are these days. Can you talk a little bit about what the discussion was with IT and their needed support to pull the project off?
Yep. So at our institution, we basically have to propose these large projects. And then depending on the timing and when we're looking to roll things out, sort of you're put in a queue or you might have to bump somebody. And so we have what we're called data stewards on our campus that represent different areas. A graduate school falls under the provost's office. So our data steward, you know, we essentially had to talk to them because of the timing of when we wanted to put something together, and because it was impacting all of our graduate students, we were able to actually move a few projects around so that this could take a little bit of a priority. But again, that's where the support and the buy-in was really helpful, to have our technology solutions team on board. And then we have a project manager that has been working essentially with the project manager from Cayuse. So they meet weekly. And then we have our implementation team that I'm more involved in, kind of going through really what our needs are. And so we're meeting, we were meeting weekly at one point in time, and now we're at a point where we are going to be starting discovery actually tomorrow, which are going to be kind of more longer workshops, again, a little bit more understanding our needs based on what we had said and kind of how we're going to build things. So it's really a team effort. And then really from our technology solution side, they're really there to advocate for us. So we've also been meeting on the side as well so that they can understand what our needs are and can advocate. So it's really worked well for us. And again, as you know, our technology team has been great and really supportive. So I think, again, if you're looking for something like this, it's just starting to have those conversations early for people to understand what your needs are and how you can try to get, again, that university-wide buy-in if you're trying to share this and have something for the entire university.
Great. Thank you very much. Really helpful insight. And I think that point you kind of, I guess, if we shine a light on the main kind of point of gathering data, collecting data, and making that a priority for the institution, I know that's a common challenge we hear across many graduate schools. And we'll take a transition now to move over to talk to Jerry Ann about her experience at University of Northern Colorado. Before I go there, there's been a few things coming at me in chat about the product itself. So just to let everybody know, as part of this slide deck, you'll have a link that takes you to a short product demonstration that you can take a look at, see the live kind of version of the product. And so that will be available for those that have been asking for it. So Jerry Ann, thanks for being patient, and we're excited to hear your story at University of Northern Colorado. And so again, may jump in with some questions as you go, but I'd love to turn it over to you at this point.
Sure. Thank you, Jason. Well, many of our challenges are similar to what Noel spoke about. We have a large number of very diverse programs that we're managing, but again, not centralized. And so many of these processes, again, are out at the program level. And some programs are better at record keeping than others. There was or is an issue in keeping tabs on student progress towards degree because of the way things are managed now. And I should take a step back and say I first joined UNC in July of 2020. And so as I was coming up to speed in the graduate school, I was seeing these challenges, largely in the context of the pandemic. At my previous institution, we had a similar platform to the Cayuse platform. And I started investigating very quickly how we might be able to implement something like that here at UNC, because both as a faculty member and as an administrator at my previous institution, I had really lived through the implementation of a similar system and experienced firsthand the impact on graduate student engagement, graduate student progress towards degree, graduate student engagement, and graduate students really taking ownership for moving forward in their programs, as well as helping faculty keep tabs on what really needs to be done and where their programs are, or where their students are in their program. Similarly to what Noel discussed, everything was paper-based or other form-based, and either hard copies had to be delivered to the graduate school or sent via email. And one thing that's even come to light even greater in the last academic year, I think, as a consequence of the pandemic and the number of things that were being sent via email, that things were getting lost, forms are being sent to the wrong email address, and this was impacting when students were ready to take their comprehensive exams or ready to defend, because oftentimes we wouldn't know that the form had been lost until we get an email or a call while the student is ready to start the defense that they don't have all the paperwork. And so being able to centralize all of this in a platform that everyone is going to have access to is going to be very helpful. We have a number of systems on campus that bits and pieces of information are in. it's hard to pull them together in one place, and not everybody who needs access has access. And so really looking for a platform that would help us centralize and ease the communications, out to the programs, to the students, to really ensure that they were making good progress towards degree. Now, as I said, we had a similar program at my previous institution, and when I contacted them to find out more about it, I was surprised to learn that it was entirely homegrown, which sent me on a quest to find something that I could purchase. And it took a while to find something. When I first learned of Cayuse, and really at a very rudimentary level, understanding what it could do, I thought this is something that would be able to assist us. It really is beyond what I was looking for in the beginning, but it's going to allow us to address the concerns with integration of our existing systems. We're going to be able to have a single point of access for monitoring student progress towards degree. All members of a student's committee, including external members, are going to be able to access the portal and leave comment on a student's committee meeting or other progress towards degree. And frankly, that's one of the things that faculty are most excited about. They're not going to have to reach out to the graduate school to get this information. Rather, they're going to be able to log on and find it themselves. Let me backtrack 1 minute, because one thing that also became evident as a challenge is the graduate school staff is small, and with the constant or the inquiries that were received from the programs, the two individuals that were most involved spent a lot of their time tracking things down and responding to emails. Cayuse is going to help with that centralized communication as well. And we're going to be able to have documents submitted directly to the portal, losing that piece of students sending information to the wrong email address, for example. We are working with in the pre-implementation now to really gather all the unique documentation needs across our programs to assess that progress towards degree, and setting up those checkpoints that we're going to be able to reach out to students and indicate what their next step should be, or we would expect to see this from you, and let us know if you're having problems so we can help you solve those so you continue to make progress towards degree. So that centralized communication through the platform is going to also be very helpful. And one of the things that we're also very excited about is being able to really make all of our forms, existing forms, obsolete, because we're going to be able to manage that communication through the platform and really have a great deal of certainty of the person who's approving the form is the person who should be approving the form, for example. Another piece of the graduate education manager that we're really excited about implementing is the repository for graduate students to upload their artifacts of their degree, to really help them start building their portfolio or their CV from what they're doing in their graduate program. This is particularly important, for example, for our doctorate in music program. The students have performances that they need to be able to document and preserve, and we're going to be able to upload video and such into the repository to help manage that. Again, another thing that the faculty are very excited about being able to do.
Hey, Jerry Ann, can I interrupt you for a second? So you've said twice now, which I can't believe I'm hearing, faculty is excited. You must be some kind of magician to get your faculty excited about a new piece of technology. So I'm wondering if you might, so were you hearing at all from faculty frustrations, about kind of communications through the graduate process? And I'm just curious if there was any, about challenges, if there was anything from the faculty side you were hearing.
Sure. Certainly concerns from faculty about the forms that needed to be submitted when forms were submitted to the wrong place and getting lost. They were getting frustrated because it may prevent their student from doing their comps on a given day or defending their dissertation on a given day. I will say that at first there was apprehension about having yet one more system on campus that they were going to have to query. But when we were able to demonstrate to them that no, information from all of our disparate systems now is going to be pulled into the graduate education manager, and you're going to be able to access that directly without having to reach out to graduate student staff, those were the pieces that they really started getting excited about. One of the things we did during the pandemic with our forms is implemented, all forms had to be signed by Adobe Verified Signature, and which really has caused a lot of angst on our campus, and some faculty have really struggled with. So being able to manage the forms centrally through the education manager, through the login into their account was also something. And so really, I think the answer to your question, Jason, was really just highlighting the benefits of what the system is going to give us and the problems it's going to solve once it's implemented.
Great. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow there. I heard it twice.
No,
I had to
no,
ask.
not at all. We did a number of discussions with our graduate council, which is a group of faculty across campus that advise us. And we started with communications with them. And as they became more excited, they started taking it back to their units, also interacting with program directors, and just those two groups were able to really kind of generate a lot of the excitement that we've seen in the implementation of the system. So I would say that in terms of university buy-in, the buy-in from the faculty has really been quite organic. And really coming from the ground up as they learn more and more about what the system is going to be able to do for us. Where I personally had to spend a little bit more time is figuring out what our university process was for implementing something like this. And I needed to get buy-in, of course, from the provost, as well as our chief financial officer and our IMT group. In fact, getting approval from the provost and the CFO was, I don't want to say the easy part, but really, because there certainly were discussions, but really putting IT's mind at ease that this was not going to add considerably to their workload or what they needed to do, that they needed to be largely involved with the implementation and managing the logins for the external people. And then the graduate school will have someone on staff who's really responsible for managing the system itself once it's implemented. And so as you pointed out earlier, Jason and Noel, having IT buy-in was critical and was really the final step before we were able to really move forward with beginning implementation of the project. And so many emails, many conversations, really outlining, on the basic implementation side, just what the technology needed, where access needed to be granted, and then documenting the impact that this is going to have on student success and student progress towards degree. And bringing those pieces together, we got buy-in pretty quickly. once those points were made. Unlike what Noelle was saying about their IT group covering the cost, we did need to make room for this in our budget, which we were able to do. And so the graduate school is responsible for maintaining the system after implementation, as well as covering the cost.
You mentioned that a staff member was going to be tasked with kind of keeping up to date and keeping the system going. Is that a current role that you were able to bring this into, or are you having to hire somebody additional to support it?
No, we've got a position who it's an individual who manages our compliance, graduate student compliance, and we were able to basically reimagine her position, redistribute some duties to others on campus that is going to allow this to be a major focus for that person. And for us, with the way our staff is structured, it really fits well with what's expected of that person in terms of monitoring compliance. They're also our person who manages degree works. And so there's a certain level of technology proficiency that's going to be important.
That makes sense. And there's some connectivity between those systems, right? We're going to be pulling some information from DegreeWorks into graduate education managers. So that makes a lot of sense. I had another question, if I could. I'm curious, Jarian, because you mentioned that there were a number of systems on campus already capturing pieces of the information you needed. As you were trying to get buy-in and working with IT and others, did you get any pressure to use something that was already existing on campus that folks thought could do this for you?
Yes, I did. There was a lot of question of, well, doesn't, for example, DegreeWorks do this, or, why can't we use Banner to do this, or something like that. And so it was really, demonstrating the importance of having the centralized information in an accessible format, as well as documenting really with example for DegreeWorks. It goes beyond just managing a program of study. It goes into the management of the whole graduate program and progress towards degree. And again, once we were able to lay that out, it was understood pretty quickly what the benefit of the system would be. And the fact that with the implementation, we're going to be able to pull that information directly and not needing IT, for example, to do a dump or an upload was also a big part of the discussion, as well as to how that was all managed. Now, to your point, Jason, there was a lot of concern about not duplicating what we already had on campus.
Absolutely, and we've heard that from other institutions, and there are other ways that organizations are dealing with this. Tom Rhodes just put into kind of the Q&A and a note about his institution using PeopleSoft as a way to capture some of the data and progress towards completion. So there are other approaches that institutions are using to try and bring some of this together. I think the challenge that we've heard from both of you that the system was able to address was kind of bringing it all into one place, and then also allowing student access, because oftentimes some of these tracking tools, especially if they're attached to an ERP system, they're certainly not being accessed by students, sometimes not even by faculty. So that can be a unique situation that you have to manage through. The other thing I wanted to ask you, if I could quickly, Jarian, and then we're going to have to get wrapped up here because we're getting close to end on time. You mentioned at your previous institution that you had a homegrown approach, which is also a very common, way to try and address these problems. Every institution on this call has robust IT teams. You have students who can help build, technology out. Was there a particular reason in your mind to not try and replicate a homegrown approach at UNC like you had before?
Yes, and I think it really comes down to what I was used to before was really a milestones tracker. It had For example, the committee's been identified, the student has passed their qualifying exam and they've submitted a proposal. And it didn't pull in all of the forms processing, the centralization of forms that the graduate education manager can. It allowed us to identify where things were maybe held up in the process, but it wasn't an automatic message out there. It was a way to manage progress towards degree, but that was really it. Beyond that, it was still the emails, it was still submitting the paper forms, it was still that sort of thing. And so looking for something that was more inclusive of everything that we needed to do was important. And, impacting really, graduate student success from all of the parameters, from the faculty side, from the graduate school side, from the student side, and allowing students and frankly faculty as well to take a bigger piece of the ownership of graduate student success and finding something that was more inclusive of everything we needed to do was important.
Great, thank you. Well, I've just been alerted that I have created one of the worst sins that you can as an MC. I've run over time. So I want to thank Noelle and Jerry Ann for their participation. I apologize to the audience for running a bit over. I'm going to turn this back over to the CGS team to wrap things up. So again, thank you for the opportunity today.
Thanks so much, Jason. Thank you, Noelle and Jerry. Very informative presentation. I know I learned a lot. So Adrian, if you want to advance to our final slide. So just before we get going today, I'd like to once again thank Cayuse for the webinar, very informative event, and to announce one single upcoming event for CGS. That's the CGS Summer Workshop in New Dean's Institute. That'll be taking place from July 9th through 13th at the Hyatt Regency in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We hope that you all can join, and this is an in-person event, so we look forward to seeing you in person. And also just keep an eye on the webinars list on the CGS website. We've got a couple of webinars kind of coming down the pipe, but we're not quite ready for this particular presentation, but keep an eye out. And once again, thank you to Cayuse, and I hope you all have a great day. You're a wonderful audience. Thank you.